Hi, I'm Abby Shu. I am our Executive Vice President and lead the consulting team at Benefactor Group. I'm really excited to be joined today by Hayley Murphy from Detroit Zoo.
Thank you, Abby. My name's Hayley Murphy. I'm actually a veterinarian and CEO and Executive Director here at the Detroit Zoological Society, and we run both the Detroit Zoo and the Belle Isle Nature Center in Detroit, Michigan.
Can you describe the work with Benefactor Group and what led you to decide to engage a partner to help look at the governance?
So my work with Benefactor Group has really been focused around our board of directors and looking at that governance model of how we form our board, who gets to be on the board, how the board functions as a board, and how the board functions in communication with me and the staff and vice versa, how I communicate with the board. I think it's always good practice to do some reflection on your governance models. You may think you have great governance, and hopefully you do, but really until you call in a consultant and do have that external look and that outside look that can benchmark, you don't know. So even if you're coming from a place like we were of really, really good to great governance already, hiring somebody like Benefactor who has industry experience with nonprofits, can benchmark against other nonprofits and in our case, other zoos, really helped guide our next steps. And so we set ourselves up for success in the future. Could we have done it without bringing a benefactor? Probably. Would it have been a lot rockier and harder and as impactful? I don't think so. And so it was well worth the time investment and the financial investment to set ourselves up for success into the future.
Can you talk about how the work with Benefactor Group went and perhaps what felt different or meaningful about the process?
We ended the first phase, which was really data gathering and assessment to base recommendations on. And then the second phase is how do we get those recommendations put into play with the board? I would say that the structure of the project from day one by Benefactor was very well structured and very well communicated. And so we all knew where we were going and when, and the guidelines for what was needed to get there were very clear, which I appreciate in a project. The other really, I thought, helpful, insightful piece of Benefactor's work was the connection. Abby especially spent a lot of time with me and my direct staff, but also talking to board members, listening, getting that information and turning it around in a way that's super useful. I don't think all consultants have that skill, but the report we got was super useful in looking at where our strengths are, but also where we could do some improvements. And so then this next phase is, okay, now we have that, how do we move that forward? And so we came back to Benefactor to help us structure that. So for me, implementation of this really meant taking this project from my hands and turning it over to the board. How do we take this project and make it something the board absorbs and lives and turns around into action? And the only way I saw to do that was to couple Benefactor consultants with our board so that they can embrace the change needed and take it forward.
As you mentioned, Detroit Zoological Society already had a lot of really strong governance practices in place. And how did the process that you went through with the assessment help to build shared understanding and awareness of perhaps moving from a good to a great structure, and what would be required both from the board and the staff in order to support that?
So we already had a really good governance model in place. I think bringing in a consultant like Benefactor really pointed out places that we could go from good to great, that maybe we had some blind spots about, or in some cases, I think I, as a CEO, recognized it, but it's really hard for a CEO to move that needle with a board of directors, especially a large board. So bringing in a consultant to kind of share that messaging, look at the data and the benchmarking, which for most board of directors, I imagine is a pretty powerful tool, right? It's not subjective. It's, listen, this is where you sit. This is our analysis. This is what we heard. And this is what best practices are. Really puts clarity and direction behind where you want to get to the great governance model from a good governance model.
So what's next for Detroit Zoological Society, and where do you see the organization in 1 year, in 5 years, maybe even in 10 years?
This year, we're opening the Fred and Barbara Erb Discovery Trails habitat in the zoo. It's 7 acres of completely amazing new structures, new animal habitats. So I'm super excited about that. After that, 5 years, we will be celebrating our 100th anniversary in 2028. And so really building that core resiliency as an organization to look ahead to the future. I like to say we're a zoo without borders. So yes, we do a lot within the walls of the zoo and within the walls of the Belle Isle Nature Center, but how can we serve our community outside of those walls, whether that's conservation, One Health initiatives, educational programming, senior programming. So I'm really focused on that, on how we serve our community to the best of our ability and stretch that limit.